Chuckleberry, Laura Mulvaney, Sparkling, Elia, Crackerjack, Sally, Jay Williams, Gumpy, her Sergio, Linda Mom, Kelly Hillard, Huckleberry, was that what it is? Rodney Johnson. Thanks for the tweets and the wee tweets. This is an incredible good morning. A hard transition after just listening to Dylan. Yeah. Oh, I want to show you this. Hold on. This is Paul Lieberman. Hello from San Diego. Hello, lovely Previn. Grammy Pammy. Nice to see you guys. This guy is a wonderful flute master. He's super into Brazilian music, which is, come on, we all need a little Brazilian music, don't we? I got to hear Because He Lives in Portuguese today, sung in my house. Good. Confinement, expansionment. I'm glad you like the music. I know. Come on, isn't it good for your brain? Isn't it good for your heart to think in these landscapes of shape and music? We'll dig it a little bit longer and then we'll jump in. This guy, Paul Lieberman, was on one of my radio shows with a guitarist named Sergio. What was his name? Anyway, it was a Latin music. If you go to dreamfarmradio.org, you'll see my archives, and I have also best of like Latin music, best of saxophone stuff, best of vocals. You're in solitary confinement. Amen. Brazilian times. Groovy tunes. Let's see who's playing piano on this. Joel Martin. Come on, Joel. Come on, Joel. We've got Rufus Reed on bass. Also Nilson Mata. Da Duca da Fonseca on drums. We got another drummer here, Tim Horner. Yaume. Eugene Friesen on cello. Come on, Eugene. We played some of his music yesterday. And Zeta Lieberman on vocals. Hey, Marcy. Can we take a breath? Just enjoy this for a minute. And I promise, by the grace of God, I will deliver some value. But this is value. Oh, here's the bass solo. Listen to this. Did you know bass is a melodic instrument? Notice how the other instrumentalists get out of the way so that there's plenty of space for the bass to be heard as a melodic instrument instead of just a bass resonance. So you have just enough drums going on to keep the groove happening and a few little punchy chords, and then we're out of the solo with the introduction. Check out that piano line. You planted your victory garden, rose to Jesus, preacher's kid. Nice. Well, if you go to dreamfarmradio.org and just go through the archives, you'll find 8 years of shows with a description of each one, and they're all fantastic. And you'll see that I usually name our sort of anthology shows in a way that gives you an idea that are groupings. Thank you. I try to deliver value. And I'm just going to let us soak in Paul Lieberman. Worship, come on. Five minutes and 1 second of beauty. Oh, come on. I just think, you guys, we have to bring that appreciation for hymns, classical music. Do you remember when I'll keep this going and see what track number 2 is. Do you remember when we listened to cartoons and it was classical music in our cartoons and paintings? Do you remember that? Do you remember how we had more poetry directly involved in our daily lives? in school and in the hymns we sang and in the kinds of music that we listen to even in popular culture. Hey, Pepper! So we need a renaissance of complicated, complex, poetic ideas and sounds to reawaken us so we don't just go to sleep in the groove of rock music, right? There's so much more. Just one of my little artistic rants, because I'm ready to hear swing worship songs, okay? Anyway, here we are. Here we are again. Fantastic beat to be with you, Robin Tench. So much deep stuff has been going on, and I was having a beautiful conversation today with someone about our old friend, hidden trauma. Now, this is not new to those of you who've been listening, but I think that we need to think about this again as we go into our fear-free mindset, and we're passing over fear in this season as we head right into the promised land of peace and government order, government out of chaos. And also as we watch the gods being humiliated around us, of society, things falling and being shaken. And it occurred to me that it might be worth talking a little bit about hidden trauma and how we respond to hidden trauma in times like these, when it seems like other people can press in and receive peace. And there might be some of you, or some things in me, where I feel like, how come they get it and I don't? How come they can get peace and I can't get peace? How come they can experience God and I struggle so much? Well, for some of you, you know, there are all kinds of aspects of how this works in the soul. But for some of you, it's an issue of this hidden trauma thing. It's an issue of the trauma in your life from what was not given to you. The capacity to receive comfort is a thing that's taught in a child and welcomed in a child. A child's ability to be in the arms, peace is an inside job, I like that. The child's capacity to be in the arms of its nurturers, mom and dad, and have that be a safe place so that safety nurturing can be transferred to that kid, to that being. Where that being can say, yes, I feel it. I receive. It's transmitted to me in the touch, in the eyes, in the sound of the voice, in the rocking, in the nursing, in the movement, that's transferring a sense of connection, value, and deep rooting, right? And for those of us who are on the adult side, stepping into that deep rooting is going to involve obedience, because we're going to have to do things in order to shepherd our souls and to work with God as He replants these capacities in us. But there's some of you who are really struggling right now. Yeah, the dryer's done. I got to go fold some clothes when we're done here. There's some of you who really struggle. And by the way, if you're on Facebook or YouTube, I can't seem to get my Restream chat working. So if you're there, I'm so glad you're there. And I do go back and check your comments afterwards and try to respond to you, but I can't see them right now. There are some of us who were left with voids in our inner receivers and our inner, capacitors, let's put it that way, where if you simply never were given the experience of being in the arms of a nurturer who could communicate safety to you, you're going to struggle at times like these, because the capacity in you isn't as developed as it will be. So you might see other people around you able to grasp and bring in and saturate themselves more with the awareness of God in this hour. And so when you are someone who's had hidden trauma, the trauma of things that were not given to you, they're just void and absent, then part of what you're going to go through in this season is the reawakening of the ability to experience God, and the reawakening of the ability to be under the blood, to be under the blood, under the doorpost, covered and protected. And you're not so far off from that analogy of the nation of Israel, because that was a group of people that I know I need to reload it, Greg, or something. The nation of Israel had both hidden and traumatic, obvious external trauma from slavery, but also from living your whole life every day as a slave in a slave situation where you were never allowed to think of yourself in any different way. Imagine all the voids that created in the people of Israel. And so part of what we're seeing in this whole Passover story is God is taking people out of that slavery, of what was the hard lashes of what was done to them, and the emptiness of not ever having an inner self-government that was a safe place. And so part of what you're going to want to press into is the reality that, again, you're going to need to play a key role in your own story as the deliverer, as the hero, as the person who learns to obey God despite all the shakings around you, and step into the promised land that he has called you into. And of course, he's working in and through you. Of course, he's helping you be aware of your new identity as a son and not a slave, as a daughter and not a slave. And so some of you really struggle right now. We've been talking about fearfully living. We've been talking about how we need to press into it, how there's obedience, there's risk, how we don't fixate ultimately on craving safety and worshiping safety. We focus on faith and in not worshiping the systems that we think are keeping us safe. But some of you, I just want to make you aware, if you missed that, and there's parts of you that haven't come alive with the touch and nurturing of mom and dad and others in your life, or systems within school or faith, fellowship things, you might think that you could just do your way into experiencing that. It becomes more transactional when your inner love and safety receptors have not been fully called to life. We tend to just think, well, if I just do the spiritual looking things that everyone else does, I should just get the same result that they get. So one person might talk to you about what they get from God in prayer, or how the Holy Spirit touches them, or what they're doing in their faith journey, and you think, well, if I just do that, I should get this. And in one sense, that's true because of the principle of sowing and reaping. Yeah, gotta fold the clothes. This principle of sowing and reaping, right? So do not fear, don't be deceived. God is not mocked. What you sow, you'll reap. So those things that you're doing to cultivate a spiritual life, to be obedient, to overcome, will matter. But if you're in a place right now where you're feeling more of a void in the space where you need to have God's inner grounding and comfort, then this again becomes this opportunity for you to acknowledge, to take a look. Like, this time is a really triggering time. So we can either run in, hide and say, hide and really obsess about keeping ourselves safe. Or we can sort of open up the interior of our life into the presence of God and begin to allow him to unpack these powerful messages we received through the traumas, the things done to us, and the hidden traumas where it didn't matter how good we were or how good things looked externally, we still walked around with this central feeling that we weren't really landed. I love this tune. Do you ever feel like you haven't really landed yet? Like you're sort of floating? And you'd like to really land in God's promises and heart, and that just doesn't seem to sit in you as a concrete thing? Well, it could be that you want to begin to start inviting God into the parts of you that were never developed, the parts of you that were neglected, because it really does make a difference in your capacity to understand and receive the truth of God and the truth of his promise to take care of you, so you can risk joyfully and walk out your faith faithfully and with a lot of risk. You can invite him in and say, God, I don't know that mom and dad ever really communicated to me a safe place of nourishing. I'm not sure that I had that. I'm not sure my family represented that. I'm not sure the church systems or synagogue systems or whatever ever represented a place where I could land and be as much as a place of performance. And if those key relationships that shape us wound up being a place of performance, then what do you think you're going to keep doing? You're going to keep trying to perform your way into being safe. That's hard, isn't it? Like perform, do enough commandments, do enough, spiritual stuff to be safe. And this is a paradox, because I just talked to you earlier this week about how if our pursuit of that pursuing safety as a thing where we're obsessed with the safety we want to pursue now, like avoiding conflict, like trying to be perfectly insulated from this virus, like not being willing to risk relationships to share the gospel, like not understanding that our life is hidden in God, like there's this paradox where we're not ever going to wind up being free if we're pursuing safe, if we're obsessed with safety in our lives right now, avoiding conflict and avoiding the risks God is asking to take us. If we're obsessed with that, we're not actually going to wind up being free. We're going to wind up being slaves to the things that we're obsessed at having or preserving to keep ourselves safe. Okay, you get that? That's true. And on the other side of that is that the keys to us experiencing that inner safety have to do with letting God heal some places where we never really landed. We never really communicated to that we're welcome, that we were wanted, and that someone would be there to take care of us. Someone would be, and God, of course, is the person who wants to be the one to really communicate that to us now, so we can give it all, so we can leave it all on the field, so we can deny ourselves, take up our cross, and follow Him. We get from Him this deep inner sense of His total nurturing of us as God the Father, His total supply to us. And that becomes something that's relational, because Yeshua, the living Messiah, lives in us, and because He is our life and our abundance, because the Father is ministering to us, and we find comfort in Him. We take strength in Him. So therefore, we don't have to be obsessed with pursuing our own safety all the time, right? And we can lay that down, and we can be radical givers and radical riskers. So, do you need some nurturing from the Father for some areas? Were you in a situation where you weren't intuitively called to life by nurturers who would lay down their lives to keep you safe? Can you identify with that? Are you aware of that in your life? People who didn't communicate that to you. I'll lay down my life for you. You're my kid. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll stay up all night. I'll walk the floor with you. I'll be the one there helping you with your learning disability while you learn how to read. I'm in. I'm the one who's going to advocate for you and fight for you. And that starts, of course, in our earliest interactions with mom and dad. Were one of them missing? Was dad never there? You didn't even know him? Well, that creates a huge void, right? Sometimes our parents worked into the world so traumatized. They did the bottle feeding and the changing, and they held us, but there was their interconnectors were disconnected, right? And so this is a beautiful opportunity. If you're trying to get your safety or your faith externally, saying, I'm just going to do the things that somebody else is doing that look so spiritual, but I still wind up having this empty void where I haven't actually landed in the arms of my Father, this is your time. This is your time. This is my time. Can you, over the weekend, in your time with God and your journaling, can you lay down your life so completely and be so surrendered to Him and His purposes in your obedience to lay open your soul? Can you begin to do some journaling about if you've ever felt safe? if you've ever felt nurtured, if there was ever anyone in your life who would give it all up to make sure you were okay, who would sacrifice self to be there for you when you were sick or when you were needed, who would hear you out when you had a cry of the heart, has that ever been there for you? Where has it been absent? And what did you learn from that? What did you learn to believe based on the patterns of nurturing in your family life? And then, my friends, your homework for the weekend is to take those things, those experiences, and what you learn to believe about yourself, about safety, about security, and being really grounded into God's presence, and lay them open in your journal and say, God, I really learned to believe that there was no landing place for me. And I don't even know that I know how to receive spiritual security. God's a spirit, and we're spirit and in him, right? So there's going to be something spiritually communicated to us that has to land in our spirits and then manifest in the reality of our souls and our bodies. Can you begin that journey? Will you do that? Will you begin to ask God where your receptors were turned off and never called to life, where you never felt like you could land and be safe, that there was no one advocating for you, no one fighting for you, no one fiercely protecting your soul? Can you begin to journal about that? Can you begin to grieve that? Can you begin to bring that to God? Can you begin to think about how that affected you and what you've learned to believe about yourself? Can you allow this time where you're not landing in safety to be a path for you to follow into God's healing? And of course, we know Praying Medic's book, 3 Easy Steps to Emotional Healing. You want to get that? That's a great one. Just a thought. It's just a thought. Because you see, the more that gets healed, then the more we're able to just move into risk. But let me tell you again, paradox. Let's say Moses, let's in our story of Passover, Moses he had, hidden trauma and he had trauma, right? He was cast out into the wilderness. He was separated from his family. He was traumatized by finding out what happened to the Egyptians. And he had hidden trauma of being separated from his birth mother, ripped away as an infant, put on the Nile. Don't tell me that's not trauma. Even if this other lady picked him up and thought he was the cutest thing, intuitively, those kind of early experiences of being ripped away from your own nurturing DNA, RNA with mom and dad, trauma. Moses had hidden trauma. And don't tell me he didn't have some sense of not quite belonging where he was. I'm sure he did, even though externally he did all the right things to be part of the family of Egypt. And then he had to re-identify with a slave people. That's another whole level of hidden trauma as well as externalized trauma. And so what did God again say to this man who had experienced hidden and traumas? He said, I'm going to set your people free, and I'm going to use you to do it. And I believe Moses' deep inner trauma and external traumas they were healed as he obeyed. Right? We're healed as we obey into God's challenges and invitations to deal with the old things and to stay present in faith and risk in the current situations. Okay, so it's important you do some things that scare you, even some things that scare you intuitively. And know that God is ready to call to life your receptors so you can receive healing, safety, grounding from Him. And that, my friends, is a 1-2 punch. It's awesome. Being grounded in God and in His truth and His word, and then stepping out in faith with every challenge He gives us to risk, even if we're still in process, even if we're still being healed and still being knit together and still being freed. We're just daily doing the next thing. That's when He told me it was time for me to get over paralyzing stage fright. And my answer was, after I freaked out, after I went into fight or flight, I said yes. And I said, like I could control it, but I said, but I'll walk through every door you give me to walk through, one at a time, Lord. I said, I'll do it one at a time, one step at a time, as long as you don't leave me. That was my agreement. I said, I'll do it. I don't know how we're going to do this, but I know you enough to know that it's going to be one step. And I know, knowing you, you're going to put me in situations that really stretch me and freak me out. But I'm just going to trust you that we're going to do this together. That's how he works with us, doesn't he? Moses, started out with the burning bush and a staff. And by the end, he is wielding enormous authority and power and demonstrating and being the vessel out of which God, him and Aaron, being the vessels out of which God delivers a whole nation. And that's what we're stepping into, right? We're stepping into that level, epic character growth in our life. To be that epic in our own story by God's transformation in us. So if you want to be a part of the group that I'm doing a group challenge with, you can go to My Fear Free Life group on Facebook and join in our daily challenges. I've been doing my declarations outside, walking my neighborhood, looking for opportunities to talk to people and minister to them, decreeing and declaring the goodness of God. And it's really making a difference. It really is. So I'd love to have you join in on that. And tomorrow night at 7 p.m., I have a new Presence Jazz video. I'm going to release the welcome song video. And if my family gets it together one of these days, we might be doing another one of our videos that my son Jean-Marc Ledoux produces for us. We'll see. It's kind of like herding cats around here. But it could happen. But in any event, I'll be with you tomorrow at 7 p.m. with a Presence Jazz video, Eastern Daylight Time. And until then, do you have some journaling to do? Do you have some discussions to have with God about your capacity to even receive what He's ready to give you and what needs to be healed in you so you can be grounded and move out of that into the life that is all about the risk into faith? All right. I will see you guys tomorrow.